Hi, I am Daniel Zaltsman. I'm Senior Developer Relations Manager at DigitalOcean. So a summary of what we're going to be talking about today, essentially telling you the Hacktoberfest story and of how we got to a place of having developers create, and this is an actual statistic, over 1 million pull requests in the 6 years that we've been running Hacktoberfest. And yes, there was a lot of swag that has been created to get to this point. We'll get into that in the talk as well. But before we get started, here are some terms, and some of you may be familiar with these terminologies. I do want to be inclusive of folks that may have not heard of these terms before. So some of the things I'm going to be talking about when I say open source, I'm referring to code that essentially isn't proprietary. It's code that can be built upon. It can be taken and used to create better code and software out there in the world. GitHub is the primary place where people come together and share their code. Repositories are projects on said GitHub, essentially collections of code. And then pull requests are changes you make, improvements to the code, requests, edits within GitHub. And so what are we going to be talking about? What I hope we get out of this today is how did Hacktoberfest become this huge community of developers, and what are some tips that I could share so that you can do the same exact thing within your communities. So, quick question, who has seen one of these shirts either online or in person in the past? Okay, so we have about, let's say, a third of the room has seen a Hacktoberfest shirt. As you could see, these are 5 different shirts from the past 5 years of Hacktoberfest, 4 actually. And what is Hacktoberfest? So Hacktoberfest is a month-long celebration of open source software where we reward developers or anyone who wants to participate really with a t-shirt for contributing to open source. It's a pretty simple program that essentially is gamified and rewards participants with a piece of swag. And the reason that I probably could have guessed that a third of you, I thought it was going to be a half, but a third of you raised your hands is because Hacktoberfest has grown substantially over the past 5 years, and this year being the 6th year. And so here are the statistics. These are four charts that we're looking at here. We're looking at the overall sign-up numbers, and it's amazing to see that the sign-ups the first year were at 700, and last year were 105,000. So how did we see that growth? How did we get to where we are today? We see the rate of growth of completions. That's essentially folks that actually complete the challenge. So we're seeing a program that not only has a lot of participants, but a lot of folks are actually completing the program in order to earn their award. So it's a combination of both. And then we're looking at the pull requests, which is essentially the outcomes, and I started the talk with 1 million pull requests, and that's cumulative from the previous years. And it's amazing because last year at least 131 countries participate. So this is also a global reaching program, and we'll talk about that as well. Another survey question, how many of you have heard of any of these organizations or companies? Wow, even more. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, these are all some of the, I can't fit all the participating companies of Hacktoberfest on one slide. These are just a few of them. And these aren't folks that just have participated one time. These are companies that have been participating consistently year over year. I think about, the Rust community, the Jenkins community. Microsoft is now coming on to their 2nd year, at least, participating. So how did we get to this point of having so many engaged developers around the world participating in the month of October and contributing to open source, and also all of these companies who want to be involved as well? So here's the BuzzFeed title of this talk. I really thought about this. If this was an article on BuzzFeed, it would be 6 lessons for building global events that unify, delight, and excite your community. There you go. So here are the things that I'm going to cover. Sort of want to give you a quick summary of what we're going to be looking at, and we'll go through all of these points today, and let's jump right in. So the first thing that I want to kick this off with is, where do all these programs initially start? Programs like Hacktoberfest. And I think commonly our thoughts are, well, we need to come up with some really brilliant idea. Like, we need to come up with the most original idea, and that's what's going to get something like Hacktoberfest started. And through my experience with Hacktoberfest, I gotta say it hasn't been exactly like that. It actually has been rooted in values. It's been rooted in, and this is a picture of our office upstairs at the DigitalOcean headquarters in New York City. And it's rooted in our company values, which help to inform how we make decisions and what we do day to day. And not only what we do day to day in our finance operations, in our infrastructure operations, in our marketing operations, in programs like Hacktoberfest, we can leverage our values and our guiding principles to help inform what we're going to do. And this is what helped create the community platform. If you go to digitalocean.com/community, it is a free resource of over 2,000 tutorials that we've written on open source topics. A lot of developers have leveraged our tutorials in the past, and that's something that's not tied to a paid service. It's something that we essentially believe that our community is bigger than just us. That's one of our values. And so that's why we created that resource. And in the community platform, you'll see that one of the central themes is open source, and that we write about all these different open source themes and open source topics and are essentially platform agnostic. We don't necessarily, you can use these tutorials on any cloud service, and that's been something that has driven this massive growth of the community platform, which gets over 3 million unique visitors a month. And so when we were building out Hacktoberfest, this is why, you asked me, why open source? Why swag? Why an incentive program with t-shirts? Well, it's because we were grounded in creating content around open source, and we also knew that our developer community liked our t-shirts. I mean, it's kind of simple. And so this was the very first Hacktoberfest blog post ever that we launched. And what I highlight here is the comments. How do we launch it? This is 6 years ago when DigitalOcean didn't have the reach that we have today, and still there was a really high rate of engagement. And I think it's because we leveraged our values and we leveraged what our community really cared about, and that's why we saw that level of engagement right off the bat that first year when we just had 700 people sign up. Not that many compared to years later. Still a really great indicator of success. So that's something that you can look at, and I highly encourage you to look at engagement metrics as a way to see if you're already getting some traction. So you've gotten some traction in your initial concept. You put something out there. So what do you do next? How do you build on that flywheel, and how do you create this program that's going to continue to have this word of mouth engine and get more people involved in it? And one thing that worked really well is asking ourselves, well, how can we continue to add value? Okay, this is a great resource for driving folks to open source. This is also a nice resource for swag. What else can we do to build on the success of Hacktoberfest? And we realized that developers and all folks that are just learners, they want to come together in person. And a colleague of mine, Samantha, and a colleague of ours at GitHub named Joe came together and created the Hacktoberfest event kit because there was a demand for folks to get the help that they need to organize events in their communities. They're not event directors, they're not community organizers yet, but they want to organize an event, and they want to get people together. And so writing out this event kit with the link provided was really our way of giving back. As you could see, if you visit the site, it's a super long page that really outlines absolutely all the little details that you might need to go from zero to organizing your very first event. Like, I am not an event organizer. When I go on the event kit, I become an event organizer. It's super easy to follow. It's essentially a 101 of how to organize a community event with all the questions that you could possibly think of already thought through and added there. And so what did this lead to? Well, the first year, there were tens of events organized. This year, as I'm speaking about Hacktoberfest, right now we have 670 events on the site. I can't fit all of them on a slide, I'm sorry. There's 670 events just happening in the month of October, organized by community members around the world. This is just a small screenshot of the event page. In countries, I think over 60 countries represented right now around the world. And so let's backtrack here. What happened? How did we go from no events organized to 670 events organized? It's because we took that step of looking into what our community valued and what they could have benefited from and created that resource for them. I love going through the list and just looking at all the different cities that are participating in countries that it's really incredible to see. So now we have some traction. We've got our community meeting online, and they're meeting offline as well. How do we continue to grow it? It's also becoming a little pricey. Maybe this program is a little too expensive for you to run on your own. I don't have the resources for all these shirts, to pay for all these shirts, to pay for all these events. I'm just, putting myself in your shoes potentially. Like, not all, swag is expensive, and running marketing programs is expensive. That's why I think it's important to partner with other companies that have similar interests and similar goals to what you're trying to accomplish. And that's what we did with GitHub. As you could see, this is Hacktoberfest. This is the second year that we did it, 2015. And there are two pumpkins, as you could see. It's not just a DigitalOcean pumpkin, there is also a GitHub pumpkin. And at the time, we knew that GitHub was also obviously trying to engage developers and be good citizens of the open source community. And so I reached out to John, who was the head of education at GitHub at the time, and essentially pitched Hacktoberfest. I shared the statistics from the previous year, shared the goals, the fact that we were on the same page and really trying to accomplish the same things, and GitHub took a chance and opted into participating and promoting Hacktoberfest. And it's really been a game changer and has helped us reach a much broader community. I think it's kind of obvious when we think about it, right? Like, yeah, partner with other companies who are doing similar things so that you have, twice or even more impact. Unfortunately, I see a lot of things happening out in the developer ecosystem where a lot of companies are doing things all on their own. And I think there's a big opportunity to partner up, and I think you'll get more impact. I will say, though, that keeping it to a limited amount of partners is also important, probably, because you want to get that brand awareness. So you don't want to go ahead and just turn it into a conference sponsorship right away where you have like 15, 20 sponsors. Start small. Start with one partner. Who would be the ideal partner for the program or the community that you're building? Ask yourself that question. And that's how you grow into building out a program that's like Hacktoberfest, but uniquely yours. Next step, the program's running and people are talking. And clearly something's going on out there, and some things are not happening as we expected. And so that's why I think it's really important to practice active listening. We hear about this all the time. And in Hacktoberfest and building this program to where it is today, we've had two prime examples of where I believe if we did not practice active listening, I would not be standing here giving this talk. And they are, firstly, the spam issue. And those of you who are developers that have participated in Hacktoberfest and are participated really in any swag giveaway or even attended a conference, you know that once you see a t-shirt on a table or on a website, you can get a t-shirt, something changes and you really want to do whatever that is. You're going to go to that booth, you're going to go to that website, you're going to sign up for that thing. Whatever it takes, you want to get that piece of swag. And what might get lost there is the positive intention and the positive contribution and the quality and the time spent and the effort. Because sometimes you want to take the shortcut to get to that point. And I think it's just a natural, it's not any individual, I think it's a human nature type of thing. And so what we saw with Hacktoberfest is there was a lot of folks who were just doing it for the swag and trying to go the easy route. Listen, that's part of what the program's all about. However, maintainers already have a lot of the load for Hacktoberfest. They take on the weight of having to review pull requests and having to respond to contributors and really be turned on fully in the month of October. So that's why it was really important for us to track these pieces of feedback in the community. People started complaining, and we were right there to hear their complaints. And every single year, we have been making little tweaks to the program to allow for there to be less spammy pull requests, is what we call them internally. I'm not going to get into all the details of how we've done that. Would be happy to share if you have any questions afterwards. But there have been incremental tweaks that have allowed us to track them better. We now have a system for tracking spammy pull requests and ultimately reducing the quantity of spammy pull requests. So that's the first area where I think we practiced active listening, and the community has built that trust around, okay, well, they're doing the right thing. They're hearing us, and they're trying to do their best. I think that's really important for you all to consider when you're building out your programs. And the second piece that I have to bring up as well is, obviously, if you're going to be sending out tens of thousands of t-shirts around the world to 131 countries, yes, some of those t-shirts are not going to make it. As hard as we try, that's still going to be always a challenging problem for any company or any organization distributing swag. And that's something that we also have learned over the years. So once again, these have been improvements that we have made every year, and we're tracking this now to last year going from 2% to below 1% unfulfilled rates for shirts. And you saw on the chart, we were at 46,000 completions last year. So out of 46,000 shirts, less than 1% of those packages made it to those 131 countries, which I'm really excited about, and I want to continue to improve that metric. But remember, what we're talking about here is listening to the community and making adjustments to make the program even better and a greater experience for everyone involved. And how do you do that? Most of the things I've included here are screenshots of Twitter, of tweets. We're still paying attention on Facebook. We're paying attention on Instagram. In the blog comments, we have an email that's set up for Hacktoberfest where people reach out to us. So think about where your community is spending time and make it easy for them to reach out. I know it's kind of scary. We don't, and that's why an FAQ is really important. And we do have FAQs around, what if I didn't get my shirt? What if I experience a spammy pull request? Still create channels that you can engage with your community. And then the next one is let the community make it their own. Let the community customize the program. Let the community remix it and turn it into something that they could feel ownership over, right? Because when they have some ownership over the program, they're going to be really excited to share it with their community, to share it with their friends, and bring more people along for the ride. And here's an example of how we've done that. We've essentially open sourced the resources that you can use from a design perspective in order to brand the program. So you want to organize an event in Brazil, or you have your project that's focused on accessibility technology, you can use the Hacktoberfest branding in order to drive more folks to your projects and your communities. Because at the end of the day, the point of these programs are to help everyone grow in their skills, help more contributions to open source, get more people to learn about the technology space. And I think this has been one of the ways that it's been effective. And here's another example of that. These are all screenshots of blog posts that were published by companies participating in Hacktoberfest. You see, it's not all about DigitalOcean. These are companies that are seeing benefits for themselves. And that's really the point, is for them to see the benefit and to engage their community and to drive more contributions to their open source technologies. As an example, I mentioned them already, Microsoft last year participated in a really big way. They created their own Hacktoberfest swag as a way to incentivize people to come to their repos particularly. And that's what the previous post was about. These are all companies that are essentially encouraging you to go to their open source projects and participate in their repos. So Ashley McNamara, who's a really awesome designer, created this custom Microsoft t-shirt, and these are just some of the selfies that folks took from around the world. Another example of what happens when the community is able to make it their own, Elmer Thomas is a former SendGrid employee now over at Twilio, and Elmer gave the very first talk about Hacktoberfest in the developer community. Not me, not someone at DigitalOcean that created Hacktoberfest. It was someone from a different company who already knew what the benefit of participating in it was, which is so amazing. That's advocacy, that's evangelism. And that's what you want to create, is sort of give it, trust that if you have a core offering, I think that's grounded in values and a clear offering, folks will come along, and you have to trust that they'll take it and make it something even better. And that's how it'll grow. And that's part of what's happened here. And these are just some of the screenshots of the events that happen all around the world. I mentioned that this October, there's 670 of them. These are some of the photos from previous years. And as I mentioned, last year, I think there were 51 countries. This year, already 10 more countries are participating in events. As I said, t-shirts were sent to 131 countries, but events, we still have a bit of a ways to go for there to be events in every single country where some folks are participating. The bottom photo is the one from GitHub did a kickoff event at their headquarters, which is pretty cool, in San Francisco. And this is ultimately what we're going for, right? We're building these programs, we're engaging our communities, we're investing all this time and effort for what? And I think it's to build this loyalty and to build this affinity with our companies and our communities so that folks have positive things to say when folks are asking them, what's your experience been with Hacktoberfest? This person would say, oh, I've participated in every single Hacktoberfest. I have every single shirt, because this is someone clearly a super fan who has participated in every single year, which is amazing to see. And the kind of evangelism that allows us to continue to spread the word about the programs, the companies, and the communities that we're building. And last but not least, and I think Hacktoberfest has it a little bit easier than a lot of technologies out there, but I'll explain what, and I'm happy to answer questions about this, is how do we make it more inclusive? Because we know that the open source ecosystem is really not a super diverse space when it comes to gender, when it comes to ethnic diversity. So how is Hacktoberfest different? How has Hacktoberfest and the community around Hacktoberfest been so much more diverse? And these are just some of the micro communities that have participated in Hacktoberfest events. A lot of them are communities of women in tech and people of color coding in tech. And I think it's really down to accessibility. I think we're having a real challenge with accessibility in the technology ecosystem, where we assume that everyone has the same access to resources, the same access to laptops, the same access to learning resources, the same access to the internet even. And that's just not the case. And the reason that Hacktoberfest, I think, has allowed for more communities to participate is because it creates a level playing field, essentially, because all you need to do to participate in Hacktoberfest is an internet connection, and you can even borrow a friend's laptop to participate in Hacktoberfest. I mean, that's a lower bar to entry than a lot of other programs that we're creating, and that's just something to think about. What is something that you can do to make your program more accessible and more inclusive to communities? Here are some quotes from community members that have participated in Hacktoberfest. Carly here mentions that she discovered Hacktoberfest through Girl Develop It, which was on the previous slide, one of the organizations, and it helped her learn how to make PRs as a beginner. That's exactly what we're going for. Here's a contributor turned maintainer of the Jekyll project. I became a maintainer of Jekyll, and we added a first-timer bot to encourage new contributors. And I love talking about this, but I think that Hacktoberfest has also unlocked a huge potential for folks in their careers. Becoming a maintainer of a project is actually something that I think employers will look at as a real pro and as a benefit. And then lastly, this is exactly what we're going after here. I decided to pay back by helping other people get their first PRs. Someone that participated in previous years and went ahead and helped others in years to come. So here, just in recap, is what we talked about. We talked about not really starting with an idea, but starting with how can you serve your community, being driven by the values that inform what you do every single day. How do you continue to build on that success? Ask yourself, where else can we deliver value? Practice active listening. That will help with number 2. If you're asking yourself, well, how can this get any better? It's already amazing. Well, practice active listening, and I think you'll find the answers there. And then work with partners to scale the program and make it even bigger than it is today. You have to let your community make it their own and let them customize it, remix it. And then lastly, ask yourself, how can we make this more accessible and inclusive? And how do we lower the barrier to entry to bring more people to, because that's really what we're ultimately trying to do here, is to create amazing technology. And in order to create amazing technology and make the technology ecosystem even more impactful is if we have everyone represented in the space. And over the years, we've built Hacktoberfest to engaging a group like this. This is really what we're going after, is communities around the world coming together to contribute to open source and, yes, earn a custom limited edition t-shirt. And it looks like one person actually has their previous year's shirt. Maybe they didn't get their shirt yet. That's the 2017 t-shirt among 2018 t-shirts. That's it for me. Thank you for sharing your night with us.